Many people talk about the ups and downs of married life, but no one really prepares you for life after your spouse passes away. Welcome to Widowhood Real Talk with Tina, a safe place for widows, widowers, and their friends and family to talk about love and loss. Find comfort as you listen to honest conversations between Tina and invited guests who've experienced the loss of their forever partner. Share their stories of love, grief, and healing. You are not alone in this journey. Join today's episode and discover a wealth of resources and learn how to connect with others who are traveling the same path. This is Widowhood Real Talk with Tina.
Hello, Widowhood, and I want to introduce to you today my host. I know, right? Miss Marcia Boarders is an upcoming podcaster, and she is going to interview me today about moving forward. But before we start that, I would like for Marcia to share a little bit about herself and her podcast because I want you to check her out too.
Thank you so much. Thank you for allowing me the time to have a conversation with you regarding your podcast, my podcast, and moving forward. My name is Marcia Boarders. I am the host for What's Grief Amongst Friends. It's a podcast based around people dealing with grief, and hopefully my podcast will touch others and let them know that they are not alone in this process. They're not alone on this journey, because you get kind of bogged down and you get to feeling like there's no one there for you, or you don't know how to interpret your feelings, the things that you're going through. And after my husband passed, January 2024, his name was Noah, I had a not so great reaction where I felt left out and I felt deserted and I felt like, where'd everybody go? And everybody went on with their life. And so I was inspired, can't really tell you how, but I was inspired to do something for other people who have had a significant loss. And part of that was starting a podcast. And that's what this is all about. And Tina has been so gracious in allowing me the time and space to speak with her about her process, how she dealt with things, and the next step moving on. So thank you so much, Tina, for having me. I appreciate you.
You're welcome, and thank you for introducing yourself to our community. And I'm in your hands.
Okay. Well, I've seen a couple of your videos, and I understand about you and Mark's relationship and what you went through. I've been watching your TikToks, and you've been giving us the journal readings, and that's been awesome. I wanted to journal, but it hasn't gotten to me yet to sit and do that. I do have a journal. I just haven't sat down with it and taken it to the next step. But at some point, could you share with us when you decided or how it came about that you decided to move forward and to begin a new relationship outside of your marriage with Mark? Well, not outside of, because you lost Mark. I apologize for that, and I hope they can edit that. But can you share with us when the decision was made for you to move forward with your life?
That is an excellent question. And actually, that answer does start with Mark. And the way that it starts with him, Mark, there was a lot of chronic heart conditions in his family. And he was certain that he was not going to make it to the age of 60. I didn't want to hear anything about it, but he had a cousin that passed in his early 30s around Thanksgiving. Both of his parents had passed because of heart-related issues. And Mark was certain he was not going to make it to 60. Our plan was actually to stop working in Pennsylvania and move to Virginia to a smaller property that we owned, and to be able to just be in a place that he didn't have to work and live off of my income because the kids were getting old. But since Mark was so certain he was going to leave this world early, we talked about what my life would look like in his absence. And in those conversations, he clearly expressed, I would want you to get remarried. I would want you to be happy. I would want you to have love in your life. I would want you to be free to do whatever you want to do. And those were some tearful conversations because I did not want to hear that. But when he passed, it was like, wow, I'm so glad that we had those conversations. because it can be a struggle with the concept. Mark and I were together for 32 years, and thinking of being in a relationship outside of one with him can elicit a lot of guilt, second thoughts. What should I do? I don't want to do something that would make him upset. All those things were clear. So that conversation I had with my husband was the setup for me to know that when that time was right, I could move forward. And I want to be clear with that because I know everyone that listens to this podcast is not a widow or widower. They are people supporting widows. There are children of people who have lost loved ones because Mark was my husband, but that means my children lost a parent and somebody else lost a sibling. So widowhood is that community. And I know that there are people from all places of this hood. And I encourage you to have that conversation with your loved one about the inevitable. It's not if something happens. One thing we're guaranteed of, one day we will close our eyes and never wake up. And if you have that conversation with them now, it eliminates that. Now, Mark has passed, and I'm living in this alternate universe. And I went to spend some time with a friend that had been single her entire life. And I put a glass down and she was cleaning it. And then I put something and she was moving it around because she had been accustomed to having her own space. And I remember thinking, Tina, how long before you don't know how to hold space with somebody else? How long before you don't have everything is just the way you want it to be and you don't know how to do that? And spending that time with that friend just made me start thinking of that in a way I hadn't before. And I was like, okay, today we're gonna make ourselves a bio on a dating app. And I was sitting there on blackpeoplemeet.com because Mark was Caucasian. And what I wasn't gonna do, I needed in my head to make sure that I was not doing something that made me think of him. Some people say they
Mhm,
want to date somebody similar to their deceased spouse. That was not gonna go for me. So Mark
mhm,
was Caucasian. He was the same height. It was gonna be a brother. They needed to be tall. Like I had polar opposite of some of those things because I didn't wanna be unfair to somebody
mhm,
else because they were gleaming towards what Mark looked like. And
mhm.
that was my intention. And so that was the catalyst for me to start moving forward and thinking about dating and bringing someone else into my life.
How long in the grieving process, how long did it take you to be okay with yourself moving forward?
That experience happened about a year, just about a little bit over a year out.
Okay.
And I want to say this because thank you for that question. A lot of times people correlate time with something. The time is only relevant what you do with it. And so if a year went by and I went to work, I came home and I isolated, that is a very different experience than my year where I was meeting with a mental health professional once a week, group therapy with other widows, reaching out to every widow that I knew, going to grief support conferences, devouring books on grief and journaling and being proactive and leaning into my hurt and pain. This was the most horrific experience in my whole life. And if there was anything I wanted to run from, it would have been this. I had just finished dealing with breast cancer and then having an emergency hysterectomy because it was turning into ovarian cancer. That procedure happened in October 2016. Mark took a job in Virginia where we were trying to relocate to. November, he moved to Portsmouth, Virginia, and he passed March 2017. I was devastated. It's hard to comprehend that now, but I was in the corner of a hotel screaming into the phone to my sisters in devastation and walking around in a grief fog in trying to figure out how do I even live? How am I breathing and getting up the next day and Mark does not exist in this universe? So I leaned in hard because I was afraid of losing myself. And if I didn't do some work, I didn't know how this would be any different. And a friend whose husband unfortunately had passed a few months before Mark, called me and said, "I cannot go to that service." And I was like, "Girl, I don't wanna go, please." And she said, "But what I have done, I reached out to my therapist, and she said that she would speak with you." And that was a gift. I had never had, a therapist or a psychologist or done any of that. But what I did know, I was in uncharted territory. And the first thing I needed to work on was me. I needed to work on my healing. I needed to work on how to drive someplace and not drive off on the wrong highway. I needed to remember how everything didn't make me anxious and everything being afraid to wake up every day. So dating, the moving forward was me choosing myself every day. The moving forward was me choosing to love myself every day. The moving forward was doing the work for me with a mental health professional and crying out to God and leaning on my faith. Those were the steps of moving forward. Eventually, it said I had space for someone else to love me, but that was irrelevant. The first part of moving forward for me was choosing not to crumble and become devastated and fall apart, because I had to come to the conclusion that people die all the time,
Mm.
but this was my person, and I needed to process that. And
Mm.
my daughter came to me in the shower that night, and we had been at the hospital, and we're leaving her dad's body there, and we're coming back to an hotel on Dover Air Force Base because that's where we were, and friends were meeting us there. And I'm in the shower, and she comes in and just rips the shower curtain back, and she goes, "Was dad the love of your life?" And I was like, "Oh, this baby needs this Disney answer." And I was like, "But words matter." And when she asked me that, I was thinking in my mind, and I gave her my honest answer. I said, "I love your dad, and I will love him forever. But I am the love of my own life, because if he is the love of my life and he is dead, what do I have left to live with? What will I exist off of?" And I know we say these things like they were the love of my life, but articulating those words meant something to me. And at that moment, I needed to start figuring out how I was going to live. And I had to capture and reclaim, I am the love of my own life. So those were the beginning steps of me moving forward, because I had to start creating a life without Mark and living
Mhm.
without him. And that's what it looked like for me.
Wow. I am so happy we're doing this because you are speaking to my heart, to my soul, and I'm sure that this is going to resonate with so many people. We're so confused as to, I'm in a support group, and one of the women in there, her biggest thing is, "Oh my god, if they're getting married after 6 months or after a year, they couldn't really," and I'm like, "Don't hold other people to your premise of how they're supposed to move on with their life," you know? I'm so glad that you said you're the love of your life, because everybody tries to pinhole you into being this person, and that person is the only one that gets hurt in the whole process, because you're trying to live up to their expectations or what you think your loved one would have wanted, or what the strangers are saying. And I'm so happy you answered the way you answered. It was so eloquent and informative, all in the same. Oh my goodness, thank you so much for that answer.
Thank you.
So
But you said something that I think is interesting, if I can speak on it a little bit,
sure.
that oftentimes people want to assess how someone else is grieving, even other widows. And I think it's very interesting for the anonymous person to make a very broad statement that if they're getting married in 6 months or a year, they didn't love their loved one. You have no clue.
Mhm,
You have zero clue. You
mhm.
don't know if they had a good marriage or they had a bad marriage. You don't know if they were polyamorous or they had multiple relationships going on and that's what they agreed upon. You have no clue of someone else's living arrangement. And
And
even
touching
though
that And touching on that, you specifically said you and Mark had plenty of conversations prior to the incident so that you knew where he stood on it. No
yes,
matter whether I knew or anyone else knew, you knew where he stood on that. So no one else knows what you two discussed. No
exactly.
one
And
else knows.
my daughter actually has heard some of the conversations, and On one of the TikToks, somebody was dragging me, and she was like, I'm about. She was like, I'm coming in. But we don't know. But we have these big opinions with little information. And also the Bible gives us verses, if that is my benchmark, that it talks about that when your husband is passed, you have completed your vow. What are you
Mm.
talking to me about? If I got married 2 weeks later, you can say whatever you want, but the question is, am I wrong? Nope. But it's interesting also, that level of scrutiny is generally only given to females. That level of
Yep.
scrutiny is not very commonly given to our widower brothers.
Mhm.
And their loss and their pain is equally as difficult, but society has a skewed opinion that you can look up statistics and find out how often when someone's wife is ill, they may progress to another relationship before they have even deceased. Not that it is all of our widower brothers, but
Right,
there are
right.
statistics that will show you, and life gives them a pass. But my husband had been out this world 3 years, and I get married and you wanna give me junk?
Mhm.
It's just a double standard that I will not silently let go by without
Mm.
addressing that.
Well, I appreciate that because, like I said, there are people who have these opinions, and if you're not a strong individual, and if you're not strong within yourself, you'll tend to let someone else lead you, and you'll sit back and say, "Oh, is something wrong with me, or am I?" Or you'll isolate yourself because you're so unsure of how to move forward. I'm so happy you spoke on that because whoever sees this, I'm sure it's going to resonate with someone that wasn't sure, that heard, "Oh no, a 6 months or a year or whatever, 5 years is not long enough. Your amount of love is comparable to what I say, not how you feel."
But thank you for actually going back to that. In comparison, I think that they're thinking about comparing the 2, or they think that you're replacing someone.
Mhm.
My choice to open my heart is just like I have 2 children. When Catherine was born, I didn't get rid of Alexander. My heart grew to love both of them. My
Right.
current husband knows I will always love Mark Fornwald. There is nothing anyone can do that will change that, nor is he trying to. He is a
Right.
mature gentleman that knows the space that he's in is the space that I want him to be in. He's not
Mhm.
competing with Mark. He is sad that this is the way that we had to get together, but he's very grateful that I'm in his life. And he knows he supports me in the work that I do supporting other people who are grieving and encourages me to do that. So there's no competition. I think people have to understand the duality can exist.
Mhm.
I can love my late husband because he was a good man, he was a good father, he was a good husband, but his journey on this world is over. Mine still continues. And it continued with me serving the widowhood, people who are grieving. And it has continued with me finding someone else to love me in the life that I have remaining.
Mhm. So you mentioned that you went on, Black People Meets. Was he the first, or was he a swipe? Did you have to swipe some to get to him?
Girl, he wasn't even on blackpeoplemeet.com. He was on
Oh.
6 dating apps later. It was not girl, the dating is a lot of work. What I would say for the people that are considering dating, sit with yourself and find out why you're dating and be
Mhm.
honest with it. If you're dating because you're lonely, you want a travel partner. If you're dating because you want a booty call, you just want to hook up because you got some widow fire going on. If you're dating with intentionality because you want to get married, if you're dating and thinking, I am drawing my spouse's retirement and I can't get married until I get to a certain age, understand yourself, why you're dating, what you're looking for, and your parameters.
Mm.
I knew that I was dating with the intentionality I wanted to get married again.
Mm.
I didn't want a booty call. I didn't want to hook up. I was working full time, so I am not living off of Mark's Social Security. Everybody has a different situation. To my gold star widows or widowers, there are parameters. There are people in situations where they may want to get remarried, but there are constraints economically that they need to
Mhm.
operate in and respect that. So all of those things dictate what your dating experience may look like. There may be some people that are dating this and would and don't want to look like they're a bag for somebody. So all of those things need to be identified. So when I started dating, no, he was not on blackpeoplemeet.com. I did meet this one guy. Well, never met him in person, but ooh, from when talking to him on the phone and everything, I thought it was gonna be it. Well, he wanted somebody who was gonna be a little bit more quicker and loose than what your girl was, so I didn't make
Yeah,
the
yeah,
cut, and I'm
yeah.
okay with that. But it was I was on blackpeoplemeet.com, I was on 50, something, 50 something. If you name them, I probably was on those. I was on
Mhm.
Bumble, I did all that, and I had met this one guy, when I was living in Pennsylvania, he lived in Richmond, and we were talking back and forth, and it dissolved. It did not work out after, because what your girl does do is I ask a lot of questions, like, "You're not gonna be dating me and can't talk."
You said right, right.
And so after a litany of questions and spending time with him, the truth came out. I was like, "Oh, I'm done with this." And so I was like, "You know what? When I move to Virginia, I will consider dating again." And I was like, I didn't want to do it. And then one of the guys I was in the army with, I saw that he had announced that he had gotten married, and he was like, "I am never doing this again." He had gotten married before, and he texted me and he was like, "Ma'am," he was like, "Are you dating?" I said, "Absolutely not." He was like, "You better get your butt out there." I was like, "I don't want to do this. It's so hot garbage out there." And he was like, "Ma'am, da 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 da." I was like, "Okay, okay, okay, I'm gonna do it." And so it was my birthday, and then someone gave me a gift card for I want to say it was $50. And I used that gift card to sign up on Zoosk, Zoosk.
Mhm.
And I signed on that dating app and I talked to this one guy. We had dinner, still talk to him. He's a pretty decent guy. And then the next person I talked to was Fred. And we had been talking maybe 2 or 3 days. And I had learned like, people ghost you, people from different places pretending that they are. So I had learned, after a couple of days, I wanna meet you in person, and I need to see that you look like what your profile looked like. Cause I met people like they 5 not they talking about they 6 feet. I'm like, "Sir, why am I looking at the top of your head if you 6 feet? Like, that don't no, sir, that is not correct." And so I was like, "I don't wanna be wasting my time with folks." We met for
Mhm.
coffee, and I was dusty. Like, some people have been widowed and they got a fire burning inside. I ain't had no fire. I thought I was
Mhm.
just about to become a nun.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
we met and he stood up and he gave me I said, "Well, I'm a hugger." And he said, "I'm a hugger too." And I was like, "We are no longer dusty. Okay, Houston, we are alive." I hugged him and I was like, it felt like home. We sat there in that coffee shop and talked for about 2 or 3 hours. And neither of us can remember 5 years later what we talked about. Actually 6 now. And that is the place we go to for our wedding anniversary, to just sit there and remember that this is where we met.
That is so beautiful. Oh, that is so beautiful.
But let me be clear,
Yeah.
a lot of trash, a lot of hot garbage, a lot of swiping left, 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 and the thing about dating, you have to give yourself to the experience to get to know someone, which makes your heart vulnerable to be hurt. But there's really no other way to get to meet somebody unless you make yourself available. But I also learned how to swipe left real quick, like and when I was dating, I didn't use my real phone number. I had a Google Voice phone number because your
Mhm.
phone number is connected to your credit and your job and a lot of stuff. And when I was dating, I always met in a public space. I always made sure that someone knew where I was, and I was going that whole gamut to be safe.
But also, I just wanna put it out there, it's fine if you don't wanna date. It's fine if you're not looking for
Absolutely.
the next marriage. It's fine. I mean, I get so much pushback. I'm not ready to date. I'm not ready to go out. I'm not saying that I'm dusty. I'm just saying, and I know what you're saying. Honestly, I did think I was dusty until a couple of weeks ago, and I met this gentleman, and I said, "Ooh, Marcia is alive." So I know what that is like.
That's why
But
when you asked me about moving forward, I said moving forward was about loving me.
yeah,
Moving forward is that continuation of life. Dating and all this other stuff is not for other people. That is
yeah,
not equating moving forward. Moving forward is when I say I'm not gonna sit in bed all day, and I'm gonna get up today, and I'm gonna go for a walk. Moving forward is when I return back to work, to my job. Moving forward is when I got to have lunch with a girlfriend or went to visit my sis. That was the decision to continue living in a life that I love. Dating was
Mm,
ancillary. That wasn't even that was the furthest thing from my mind.
mm.
So moving forward, that's what I went back to. Moving forward was that recapturing life for me.
Well, I feel like for me, it's getting to know me without Noah, and so I have to do other things in order to know what I like and who I am going to be, and, compared to everything was, "Oh, am I gonna do this? Oh, is it gonna affect Noah? Oh, am I gonna do that? Oh, is it gonna affect us?" So to me, that's what moving forward means. But, what I was saying is that some people have the opinion that, I will just say it, some people of the male persuasion have the opinion that, if you're not doing all of those things, dating, hooking up, and all the rest of that stuff, then you're just wasting your life and their time.
Sir,
even
sir, there
even
is more to life than you.
even if you say, this is not what I'm looking for, but then they want to tell you what you should be look. And so
Then that
I just
means
want
you are a swipe left for me, and we would need to spend 0 more time together because you are not mature enough to understand I'm a whole grown woman.
yeah,
And I will dare say there is something different about dating someone because they want you, not because they need you.
yeah.
Was not dating you because I'm looking for you to do my nails. I'm not dating you because I need you to pay to get my hair done or pay my mortgage or pay for my car note. Sir, no. God is already taking care of me. I am fine. It is whether or not you appear to be compatible to live life with me and coexist and dream together and hope together and meet somebody there. I don't need to have you. I
Mm.
need air.
You are speaking to my soul. You just don't know you are speaking to my soul. But okay, so in moving forward, you took the time to grieve to a certain extent, but then you got up and you went back to work and you started doing external things outside of the house. How difficult did you find that? And I asked that because I did a live earlier on TikTok, and I was saying how it's cold up here in the Northeast, and it's so easy to stay in the house and self-isolate and get caught in that, "Oh, I don't need to be out and I don't need to be around people and I don't," and then fall down that hole. So, how difficult was that for you to decide, "This is what I need to do"?
It was extremely difficult.
Yeah.
It was so hard because your home does become your cocoon. It becomes your safe space. It becomes your oasis. You spend time there because noise, the vibration, everything seemed extreme. The sun was too bright. Everything being outside of my house was hard. It made me
Mhm.
feel vulnerable because my husband dying was a true sense I have control of nothing in this world. And every time I had to leave my house, the stress, the anxiety, the buildup of that, it took me 3 months to go back to work. I was sitting in the house thinking, maybe I don't go back to work. Maybe I don't do this. And I was like, Tina, how many cats and dogs you gonna have if you do that? Like you still have a career, you still have stuff you have to do. And that is why having my therapist was a proactive part of me leaning into my grief, her challenging me, her giving me assignments, her making me be reflective, her making me deal with any what if statements, not being in denial, being free to express my emotions. That I did want to continue living. The problem was Mark died,
Mm,
and life without him seemed unbearable.
mm,
And I remember pulling up to the parking lot at work, going into my office, and everybody going, "Oh my gosh, she's back," and staring because where I work, a lot of people knew.
mm,
And people come into my cube. I'll never forget this one person. I've been back to work, I think maybe it was the first day, and this person came up to me. and they were like, I'm so sorry that your husband passed. And, but I never been married. And it seems like at least you were married. And I was sitting there, I was frozen. I couldn't move. And I was like, and a friend saw me and she came and interrupted the conversation and walked me back to my cube. And I was like, the mental fog and grief brain is a real thing. My cognitive skills were slow. Me driving was a danger, like me trying to make sure and focus, and I would drift off and start thinking about Mark died and having to go home. Our routine was me going to the grocery store, the bags into the vehicle. I pull up to the house, the kids unpack the groceries, Mark would thaw something to dinner, and now all that was on me. So I was like, I was in the grocery store crying because I was
Yeah.
like, I gotta go home and
Yep.
take the groceries out and I gotta do all this. So I said, you know what? We went with a food delivery service. I went with Blue Apron.
Mhm.
And so all of that changed, and it was hard, and I had to start figuring out ways to change my pattern. I had to change the direction of our furniture because when I came in the house, I may have expected somebody to be sitting somewhere and doing that. So the muscle memory had to change by changing the furniture and where it was to give me a different response when I came into the house. I changed what
Mhm.
was bedrooms and other different things, just moving things around the house to give myself a fresh perspective.
Yeah, I think that must be, the go-to is to make changes in the house because, well, I did read that, but I also, did the same exact thing. I, for the most part, everything we did in here was a joint effort. The furniture, the bedroom furniture, the living room furniture, the basement furniture, the other bed, the everything was a joint effort, and I realized that what I was doing initially, I didn't. I was, like, trying to figure out what was wrong with me, but I started making these changes, and I realized, like, a couple of months ago, I'm now trying to find out who Marcia is and what Marcia likes. That
Right.
was us, and there was nothing wrong with us, but there is no more us.
That
So now
part.
I have to figure out who I am and what I like, and, so yeah, I definitely get that. Wow, wow. Now, when you moved down to Virginia, did you buy new furniture or did you keep the same furniture?
Good question. A mixed match of the scenario. Our son moved to Texas and he took what was the original front room furniture. He took what were the dishes that we had. I gave away a ton of stuff because I was downsizing to less than half of the space that we lived in before, a different configuration. So the purge had to happen. And that was forced upon me by relocating. And then I purchased some furniture from someone else, and I think when I look at now, I have the same bedroom set that Mark and I had, and I have the same dining room table and chairs. Besides that, everything else and yeah, every room is different.
And when you come home, you say, "I'm home."
Oh gosh. When I first came here from Pennsylvania, moved to Virginia, I was renting a space. And when I tell you my tribe is my backbone. My siblings and my friends, some people say, well, people didn't show up for them and they weren't there like you were discussing in the beginning of your podcast. I believe that God assigned these people to me to give me a full cup to pour out of because
Mhm,
my friends, my siblings have told the line. My friends have increased, not decreased. People
mhm,
did things for me and they showed up and did what they said they were going to do. In case
mhm,
in point, when I relocated from Pennsylvania to Virginia, my friends and my sister, my stuff, household items came, I want to say maybe about a week or two before me. They unpacked my bedroom, they unpacked my bathroom, the closet, and they unpacked the kitchen. They made sure that when I got here, there was a tub with hot water, a bottle of wine, and I came in because they said, "Can we do anything for you?" And I was like, "I'm gonna be driving from Pennsylvania to Virginia, like, where am I gonna sleep? How is this gonna work?" And he's like, "We got you. Say less." And when I got here, the bed was made. There was a cold bottle of wine, a glass, and I got here. My sister and some friends met me, and they hugged and kissed, and we did some kikiing, and I came into the house, and I took that bath, and I cried, and I talked to Mark, and I was like, "I'm here. I made it to Virginia.
Yeah.
I did what we said we were gonna do. I don't know where we're going from here, but I made it, and I miss you so
Mm.
much." And I just took it step by step.
So when you made it there, that was that the finality of your vow? Was that, okay, I did what we said we were going to do? Was that it there? Or were there other, promises that you 2 made or just, visions that you 2 had together that needed to be fulfilled? Like, Noah and I used to always say we were gonna go. He was born in Africa. His dad was in the service. So he was born in Africa, and we used to always say, "Oh, we're gonna go back, we're gonna go back, we're gonna go back." Oh, I wanted to go back so bad with him. And, actually last year, the year he passed away, we were going to plan it for then. I still want to go back. I still wanna go there to see where he was born and everything like that. But, excuse me, it's no longer a us trip. So, I think I look at it a little bit differently than if he and I were doing it together. So, I say all of that to say, were there any other plans that you made that no longer existed because it was no longer a us thing? Or were there other things that you had to carry out just to complete it because it was an us thing?
That is an excellent question, and I was thinking as you were explaining that, moving to Virginia was one of our biggest goals. The children were getting older, they were gonna be empty nesters, and we were going to relocate and downsize. Living in that house in Gloucester is never gonna happen as far as I know, because that is just so painful. The thought of going back to that house without him. I've been to the house, it's rental property, but moving back to Virginia was the biggest thing that we were going to do. The next thing would be, I think, giving myself permission to live in love was something he gave me permission to do, and doing that was the next item that I was able to carry out, making myself the focus, making myself, the priority, and choosing to live and work out and do stuff. We often talked about me getting a Jeep Wrangler, and I did purchase one of those. Her name is Misty Knight for all my Jeep Wrangler gals and guys out there. So if you have a Jeep Wrangler, hit me up. I'm about that Jeep Nation, and I love that. But besides that, it hasn't been anything else.
I think that I've come to the end of my questions. Is
Okay.
there anything else that you would like to share with us that I haven't touched on?
Let me think about that. I want to reiterate the idea that moving forward is what we do every time we get up after our person is no longer here, and
Mhm.
not to allow someone else to frame for you what moving forward looks like for your own life. You and someone else may be grieving the same person, but your relationship with them, your connection with them is different. And so, and you're a different personality. So the way that you grieve them will differ. Do not compare your grief journey to someone else, but I encourage you to hear other people's grief journey and pluck out the things that resonate for you and make them part of your grief journey and decide the things that fit you. And I want to encourage you to seek community. Connecting with other people who understand how you feel has a way of validating your feelings. And I will never tell another widow or widower, "I know how you feel," because I don't.
Right.
I know how I feel after my husband Mark passed, but I don't know how Marcia feels from Noah
Mhm.
passing, because she's a unique person. Her marriage to Noah was unique. Only her and him know what that looks like. I
Right.
can sympathize, I can relate, but I will never say, "I know how you feel," because I consider it off basis.
Mhm.
And I encourage you to know you're not alone and to seek community and connection because it does help to be with other people who understand
Mm.
you.
Well, thank you so very much. I really, really appreciate you, Miss Tina. This has been an eye opener. This has been confirming. This has been, oh my goodness, it's just like you were speaking directly to me about how I feel about all of this. And I appreciate it. I appreciate it. And I would love for us to, get together again further down the line and maybe have another conversation. I don't know what that conversation will be, but I would love for it to happen further down the line. I look forward to seeing you on TikTok as I do. Your journal readings are so poignant. I mean, when you say you wouldn't say to someone, I know what you're going through, when you read your journal, your journal entries, you're saying, I know what you're going through because the things that you share are exactly what I think and what I'm going through. Because you just did today or yesterday at the 1 year mark. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's exactly how I feel at the 1 year mark. It may not be exactly for everyone, but the information you're giving about what you went through and how you felt at these points are resonating with so many people. So many,
Mhm.
you know, it's like being sick. You just want to confirm that you're sick. So when you're grieving, you just want to confirm that, there's nothing wrong with you. You're okay. You just have to
Yes.
go through the process. And your readings are definitely, definitely helping through the process, and I appreciate that.
Um,
So
you're so welcome. And I just want to share what Marsha's relating to. Every Wednesday for the year of 2025, I am sharing a journal entry. And I was using this book, Understanding Your Grief 10 Essential Touchstones, Finding Hope and Healing. And this is literally my journal that I was writing in. And every week I'm sharing a different entry from this conversation. And that is what I'm doing. There's nothing, I wrote that 8 years ago. It was what I was doing to survive. And I came across it as I was cleaning up in my office and in the house. I was like, huh, this is something. And I was thinking, oh, this could be boring. People probably may or may not be interested in it. But it was like a lot of people see me 8 years into a very long, tedious process. And I was like, this would be an opportunity to share with people what my process and journey and struggle looked like to get to the space that I'm in. In 8 years, like I said, a lot of work. 8 years from somebody else may look differently, but this is what it took for me to get here and part of that. So there's insight into my whole head into that process.
well, it's much appreciated. I'm gonna tell you, it's much appreciated.
Well, you are so welcome, Marcia. Thank you for being. Thank you for this opportunity. I have never been interviewed on my own Well, actually, I digress. My first podcast
The
was
first
my
one.
girlfriend, Jerry. Oh, you saw that one.
Yeah, yeah.
Jerry interviewing me. So it's been a while. Thank you. So this was good to do something different. I appreciate it. And to
I
everyone,
appreciate all the help you have helped. You've helped me with this because there were so many things that besides last night, but there were so many things that weren't connecting on my part, and you've just been so humbling to help me the way that you have. I mean, it's just I really appreciate it. I really appreciate all the help that you've given.
you are welcome. We are on this journey together. And
Yeah.
there's one thing about your spouse pass and make other things kind of minimum. It's like, okay, it'll work out. If we're really going to be here to help each other, sometimes it costs you a little to help other people. And
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. I want to say thank you to everyone that has been part of this conversation. And I encourage you to share your comments, share what moving forward looks like for you, and reach out to Marcia on her podcast. And more than anything else, I am so sorry for the person that you have lost that has brought you to this conversation. But I'm glad that you found us and allow us to be part of your community on this journey. And I'll see you guys next week. Have a good day.
Bye bye.
Hello, Widowhood. I want to say thank you for every podcast that you have listened to, every podcast you have shared, and the comments that you have made. I am so honored to be able to share and support you. I am inviting you to help celebrate my birthday. For the month of May, your celebration is the donation of $5 in the month of May, 5 and 5. See what we're doing there? Widowhood Real Talk with Tina is a nonprofit registered 501c3, and your donations help us continue the podcast. And you can do that by texting HOPE for Widowhood to 53555. $5. Every person that's listened to one podcast would donate $5. That would help us continue doing the great work and serving the bereaved. We do that by hosting mental health events. We have a walk for love. You help us support our memorial garden, our butterfly release ceremony, a celebration retreat at the end of the year for widows and widowers. You are helping us provide books for people that are newly bereaved, a grief support group, and so much more. Your donation helps us help others. Thank you so much for texting and donating $5 by texting HOPE for Widowhood to 53555. Thank you.
Thank you for spending another episode with Widowhood Real Talk. If you found the contents of today helpful, share the episode to anyone you know who may need it. Subscribe to the show and tune into Widowhood Real Talk each week. Then, visit widowhood-realtalkwithtina.org to join the community and access additional resources. Remember, you are not alone in this journey.